Hello, listeners out there. Welcome to another video on me talking about Lorcana. And we played the big event last weekend on Saturday and Sunday. There was 2 events, and they were a combined thing. So how well you performed over both events affected another prize pool. And for as much as I've been mentioning Amber Steel, I'm going to play Amber Steel aggro, Amber Steel aggro. It's going to be amazing. I think it was amazing. The person who won the entire event won. Axion, he was top 8 on day 1. His only loss on that day was that top 8 game. He came first on the Sunday event. And overall, like I said, there was another prize pool for your combined scores on both days. He did the best score out of everyone by mile points. Like, he only lost 1 game. He came first in that as well. And he was on Amber Steel aggro, was on a variant of the hybrid one that I've been posting around, so I think it's a very good choice. But for myself, we were playing it on Friday. We had something to play on Friday, and basically, I didn't really enjoy that everyone was teching against me. It felt like even the matchups that I felt were quite easy or very hard, everything was an uphill battle. And it felt like we got to that point in the meta where people had put enough aggro techs in their deck that I just really wasn't enjoying it that much. So we had a mental breakdown. Not an actual mental breakdown, no, I'm just being silly. We had a breakdown and we decided to play a different deck. So we went with Blurple. And just from pointers, I didn't have any competitive experience playing Blurple. I played it like a couple times locally. Just at league and things like that, and of course I tested into Blurple many times. So I thought it was a decent deck. The Mulligan is very simple, and the first 4 turns I'd say are pretty much autopilot, and then from there out you can sort of play with your kind of just intuition with the game, and you can do quite a lot of skilling with it, so I quite like that. So yeah, it looked all good. I picked up on the Friday, like I said, I got home on the Friday, played 3 games on the sim that we don't talk about, and I thought that was good enough testing, and I'll bring it to Actin. And really, to be honest with you, I didn't expect to do very well. I thought I was going to just bomb out of the entire event, but I'd be having fun because I got to play Bell turn 1. But it turns out Blurple is not a joke anymore. It's actually very viable and very good. And on day 1, I managed to finish 6-2. And I got 21st out of 100 and something people, and on day 2 we managed to finish 3rd, and that was out of 100 or so people, and that overall made me the 4th best, like, most consistent player of the day, which was also a funny thing. The 3rd most consistent player was a Blurple player as well. But kind of all I was really trying to do was, right, I can't really decide to land on the deck. I really want to play Amber Steel aggro, but I'm generally not feeling it. I don't want to bring that energy of not feeling this deck into this long weekend where I'm going to have a weekend locked in of not feeling it if the deck doesn't run very well. So I thought, yeah, I'd really like to learn Blurple, and I thought this was a good environment to learn Blurple. So day 1 was very much a learning thing. Like, every matchup was like learning like all the nuances, all the little tricks, all the little tips, like how to win. And like I said, I only dropped 2 games. I was against Ruby Amethyst Shark, which, funny enough, I learned is a very bad matchup for this deck. And probably not the worst matchup. Steel Song is probably the worst matchup, but Ruby Amethyst Shark was generally quite... There were so many little tricks there, like you have to always count how much ink or what they could do next turn if you haven't removed the Peter Pan, and you have to also count like what they could do by playing, say, Shark and Peter Pan, so you have to look at like 9 ink turns, and you can't really use your Hades because you're ramping them, and we're going into a big resource war and you don't want to ramp them, but you also have to remove their Maui Shark, so it was just very much a learning curve. After that day I thought, right, yeah, I'm really locked in to do quite well on the next day. Like, I was just sat, I managed to get somewhere to stay there for the weekend, and me and Ali, and I was just messaging people like Blurple experts that I know. Of course, there's a JDRR's list, so we were just asking him all the little tips and tricks on like how to do these matchups, like what should I be doing, and we soaked in all that information. And that's generally like the best advice I'd say for learning anything in card games, is like just go out and watch their content. Like, I also looked over his guides and things like that, and just picked up any tricks that I could for each matchup. Any reasons why we don't play certain cards that I thought should be in the list, as well, convincing me not to cut certain cards that I wanted to cut. Even though Monstro was putting in a lot of work, I kind of just wanted to cut him. But no, I'm very glad he stayed for that day too. And like I said, we managed to get 3rd on that event. We only dropped 1 game. It was against Steel Song, and they were playing very well. They were running very hot, and that felt like a very deserved loss. But all the other games felt very winnable. I felt like I had agency. I felt like I could do anything. It's been so long as well. I played so much aggro decks that I forgot like what past 9 turns are like in Lorcana. When you're still doing massive resource wars and things like that. Like I say, trying to remind myself of the Sapphire Steel ramp days. But overall, yeah, Blurple felt great. I'm kind of, I feel if I was arrogant enough as a person, I wanted to label this video like in a weekend I became the Blurple master or something, but I definitely am not the Blurple master. I think there's still loads for me to learn. Like I said, I was going away thinking, why don't we play this card? Why don't we play this card? But there's very good reasoning for the way this list is laid out. And I think it's an awesome list. I think as well, anyone, I was saying to Ali as well on our drive back, I think Blurple and Amethyst Steel, I'm going to mention these two decks, are very good decks if you want to learn like the fundamentals of Lorcana, and I think they end up making you just a better player because majority of your games you're just playing the fundamentals. You are not hoping for Diablo shift turn 1, start discarding their hand, win off that, or Cindy singing for insane amounts and then dock spamming, or whole new world and doing what you're not playing anything that's high roll. You generally have to play the fundamentals of good trades, good value, when to play your draw cards, when to pressure the board, when to quest. You have to learn all these little things. So there's a lot of skill expression with the deck as well, because as I say, that's a learning position, but that's also a point when you can express your like skills in Lorcana and play a lot better. And the only other thing that I'd say that maybe Blurple isn't that much of a deck, you do have the Belle turn 1 that you can still do, and her singing friends on the other side can just get you these huge advantages. But besides that, yeah, it's very much playing the fundamentals. Like if they play an evasive character like a Genie or a Peter Pan, you have to think, how am I going to trade to get rid of this off the board? I don't have a Brawl, I can't just Zeus it, I have to actually kind of play the game, which is a good thing and a bad thing, but I really liked it for that. So yeah, I think this list is great. I think so. Yes, on the day one, the only difference between this list was the Annas were Merlin crabs. I basically hadn't played with the Merlin, played with this Anna, so I just didn't want to run it. I didn't want to like on top of learning Blurple, learn a new Blurple card as well. So we stuck with crabs, and they felt like kind of a crutch. And to be honest with you, they never were very useful. It's very awkward for any turn when you can actually play the Merlin crabs, because you basically ramp on 2 and then you just play value every turn by putting a 4, 5, 6, on board 7, 8, and then you just draw cards and spam the board even more. So any turn where you can play the crab is kind of awkward. And yeah, after day 1, I was like, no, I can learn this new card that I've never played before, having to read it whilst it was in my hand a couple times just to make sure I do exactly what the card did. But yeah, his list is very good. I think as well, what I've learned from Blurple is I think Blurple should always be a sort of 2-liner deck. So as you can see, it's only 2 lines on Dreamborn, and that's because the main powerhouse of this deck is incredibly consistent. Over the 2 days that I played, only one game I'd say it bricked, and I wouldn't even say that was a brick. All that really happened was the deck it draws a lot, and we just ramped out, played our curve, and then we never got any card that said draw another card on it. I needed one. I hadn't seen a Finest Keepers, Porpskull, Tamatoa, anything that said draw a card. So I was like just praying on it. I didn't see it. 3 turns was just Tipo, Fox, crap, it was just dead draws. So I was like, oh, okay, I lose this game. I was probably going to lose that game anyway. I was on the draw versus Ruby Amethyst, and they were miles ahead of me. But yeah, that was the only time it felt rough. And, having that once out of when I used to take Sapphire Steel ramp to events, and I thought, 2 of these games I know are going to be just dead, have multiple whole new worlds in my hand or whatever, whereas this doesn't have it. So I think keeping it as a 2-liner, keeping everything 4x is just great. It has low uninkable count of 8 in this list at least, and I think that's also great because you can just insanely mulligan for Belle turn 1, and you play your Sail into your 4-drop, which optimally would be the Genie, which is just another awesome. It's just all round full consistency, card draw, value. It's just like the value powerhouse, I'd say. Where it struggles, of course, is anytime your opponent can go wide, which means that Steel Song is a horrible matchup. So on top of the fact that they can delete everything on your board with their songs, which is just, if you're playing a value game, a song is always going to be a lot more valuable than anything, because in a sense you get to play it for free. Singing Whole New World compared to playing Finders Keepers is night and day. I know they're very different cards and have very different things, but getting 7 cards for free, I know you give your opponent 7 cards as well, but that's a lot bigger than paying 5 ink to draw 3 cards. So yeah, you always sort of lose that matchup. You kind of really have to pray they brick, which isn't uncommon for Steel Song, of course. They do brick a lot, and I was seeing a lot of bricks over the weekend. But when I played against one, they didn't at all. They just ran over me. Yeah, it's kind of rough. And then anytime they go wide, which is the whole deck is sing the whole new world and go wide, you struggle because every character you remove has to be dealt with one by one. You don't have a be prepared. You don't have a grab your swords, Tinkerbell. You don't fling songs at them like mad. You have to be, hit Fox bounce, hit Elsa, move the damage of Belle. You have to do all these little things, so those are always quite tricky to do. But besides that, like we played quite an array of decks. Like Ruby Sapphire Shark felt very good. You could win the resource war. Ruby Sapphire items, I think, is probably its second worst matchup, and even that one felt winnable in the end because you have a game plan where you can lean on. I'm just going to value aggro, so I'm going to get my ramp on 2, and I'm just be playing 4s and 4 drops going wide. Hopefully, I have a Bell to sing the friends because I need the draw engine to keep going. But even so, Genie says draw a card on it, so it replaces itself, and you get a 2-quester on the board. You run them out of their Sisus and hopefully win before they could ever do a dime toa dime turn. So it felt like I had agency there. But yeah, just overall, besides maybe Steel Song, the deck just feels very, very solid. And I think all of these cards in there are justified. I still have some cards I'd like to test. And by test, I probably mean run it by people who are Blurple experts and they tell me why they cut it from their lists. And that's already happened a couple times. I thought the 5-cost Donald Duck that ramps would be very, very good because all of your 5-drops are reactive in this deck, Belle and Elsa. So sometimes I feel like I would want a proactive 5-drop, so the Donald Duck would be good. But there's loads of reasons not to. It's just, you probably just end up better drawing 3 cards and doing something else on the next turn with Finders Keepers, or just play the Belle because she's a 4/4 on Quest for 2, whereas Donald is a 3/4, so he doesn't trade very well into things like Scrooges or even a Lawrence takes him out quite nicely, to be honest with you. And Lawrence into a Rapunzel here was horrible. So yeah, I kind of have some things to test, but I think this list is very solid. I'd play it in other events. As long as Steel Song didn't somehow become like the top deck. I know it's very, very popular. But I think with the Ruby Sapphire, anytime Steel Song becomes popular, people could just react to Ruby Sapphire and then beat it. So it never really will have the chance to be as big as it wants to be. It's very popular. It's very good. It beats a ton of decks, but of course, if you went to an event knowing that Ruby Sapphire, Steel Song was going to be that popular, you're playing Ruby Sapphire. And then, like I said, I think Blurple is fine into Ruby Sapphire. So, yeah, I definitely played this list again. I'll go for each card as well and sort of trying to justify it. Like, so you've got your ramp cards in there, you've got Tipo and Sail. You always just want to get that ramp on 2. And as I said, the mulligan is very simple because all you really aim to do is just you want to get that ramp on 2. If you haven't got it, you're almost going to full send the entire hand. And if you can, you've maybe got ramp on 2 in hand, you look for a Bell or a Porp because you also want to get that turn 1. And then from there, if the most optimal hand would probably be a Sail, Porp, Bell, and a Genie, and then everything else could be Ink, to be honest with you. Those are really the only cards you want. You could put a Friends on the other side in there as well. That'd be another good thing because her singing Friends can be busted to get that early card draw for free. Besides that, yeah, it's very much just get ramp onto Bell if you're lucky, and then a Genie. I was never looking for Friends. It's just if you ever draw it, that was good. You could also do some crazy moments where you play Porp, Sail, Porp, another Bell, and you're locking out any aggro deck, or against a control deck, you've got 2 questers and you can sing Friends, and you've thinned your deck by 2 cards because you play 2 Porp scores, so that's great in there. I'm still running the Foxes in there. I think I saw a lot of Blurple players have cut the Foxes, but to be honest with you, going very heavily into the later game resources decks like Ruby Sapphire Shark, the ability to play the Hades out and then bounce it back to hand, play it on the Shark, bounce it back to hand, let them know you have a constant threat if you could Hades at any point. They might do things like throw a Sisu on the board just to make you try and use a Hades, but then of course now you have the Fox and you can just run that into the Sisu and remove it. So I think that's amazing as well. So yeah, I definitely want to keep it in there. I don't think you need snakes. I think you don't bounce as much as I'm saying it's that good. But even as well, I had niche moments where I'm not drawing any more Tamatoas. I haven't got any card draw cards in hand. Bounce Tamatoa, play it again. Not an crazy optimal line at all. Nothing amazing, but you've got to reuse it again. And every card in your deck basically gets the ability to be played again. Even you haven't got an Elsa in hand, you really need an Elsa, but you do have 8 ink. You can bounce your Elsa back and reuse her again. And then if it's not an evasive, you have 6 damage to throw at them because they both have rush. So that's awesome. Bell turn 1, it was kind of one of the reasons why I wanted to play the deck again. Getting Bell down turn 1 just feels amazing. I think it also means the deck has a fair game into aggro. I think that's maybe one of the only times the Mulligan might be a little bit different against aggro. If you can get Porpsicle Bell, Tipo Fox in hand, and they're going to open like Daisy spamming, you're in a really good spot there, where you can just sort of clear up the board, keep it very low, and then, you know, put your genies and bells down and start winning the game from there. So I think the Bell port package was generally what enticed me back into it, and also the option to ramp. A lot of the Blue Steel players said to me that playing Blurple is like playing 50% of the cards you really liked in Sapphire Steel, and by that I guess it just means you get to ramp, and then you get a chance of playing Bell turn 1. Genie is just an insanely busted card versus a lot of the Steel decks, as long as they don't have Zeus. You know, he's just going to sit there questing. You can put damage on him to move for Bell. It draws you a card, replace himself. Just the best thing to play after a sale against even Ruby Amethyst, who could brawl it. What usually happens there is if they take a turn off to brawl, you come out of that trade not the worst off, because that's going to take their entire turn. And if your next turn is just play another Genie, you're probably fine from that entire interaction. So yeah, just an amazing card. Iago was the one that interests me the most because of course, most commonly a Steel player. I mainly play Steel decks. For my first game, it was against I can't remember what it was against, but I was a non-Steel deck, and I was just inking Iago like every turn because I just thought this card's. I've always looked down upon it because I'm a Steel player. I thought this card's useless. Why is it even in the deck? I don't even know why there's 4 in this deck right now. Until I played it and then realized how amazing it is. You know, if they don't have Steel removal, he just does so much work. You know, cleaning up Scrooge McDucks into items, cleaning up Sisu's. If not, he just sits there and questing. He sings friends for you, he trades, you port heal him up and trade him for even more. Just all round an amazing card just to slam on the board. There is that gamble that they run some weird techs like Hypnotic Deduction, but you play with such high ink advantage, it probably won't matter too much for you anyway. So just all round an amazing card. And yeah, just really liked it. I didn't realize how good it was because, of course, I'm so used to playing matchups where Steel is involved, and Iago just gets straight in the inkwell. But no, just amazing card. Really, really proved itself today. In crazy statted as well. Merlin Goat, I saw a lot cutting the Merlin Goat. I think when you cut the Merlin Goat, you go down a different route with the deck, and that's absolutely fine if you want to do that. But you kind of want to look for where your reach for the deck is elsewhere. I've seen a lot of the builds running Ratigan, so you will just ramp and slam down a Ratigan and then get that to quest for so much lore. But here, like especially into like the Ruby Sapphire matchups and maybe in Ruby Amethyst, you sometimes want to pressure the board, so you play the goats out, knowing that they're probably going to have to B prep you, because if you like double goat and pop a port for Bell, they're going to have to probably B prep that board. They can't really do much about that. They might let you sit on it because they're going to shark value it, but in that instance, you should have been dealing with the shark anyway. But yeah, you can just do things like that. Even if they B prep it, you get 2 lore left as well. And I had games where it was a complete stalemate and we couldn't really commit anything to the board. We both had managed to get our resources fine. So you just spend a turn bouncing a goat with a fox like you used to, and you know you get your 2 lore and you establish a 4/3 on the board as well that's going to quest for 1. So it just, for me personally, I really quite like the goat still. Not a bad play if you're going to go for the aggro route as well. You slam him down on 4 after the ramp and he just sits there being annoying and questing, and you could either bounce him or they'll have to run something in because 4 strength is still quite strong in Lorcana. So yeah, just all around, I'm still quite a fan of running the goats at the 4x. Great body, great pressure on the board to take their B preps out of their hand. Gives you lore, you know, he's just amazing. Of course, the Bell moving damage is something that's really helping with the aggro matchups. And as I mentioned about trying the Donald flat-footed, I think he would be pretty good. But the Bell, you know, you can play her to move the damage. You can even use the shift, which is really nice. Move the damage across. 4/4 is great if you shift and then take out a Daisy and you have this really nice body established on the board. And even on top of that, like you can just hard play her with no use of her ability because you're establishing this big body that quests for 2. They're going to have to deal with it at some point. But amazing. And the moving damage kind of gives you this ability that's like Steel, I guess, because you're moving damage counters around. You're kind of like doing Steel damage. You're not really, but it's really good. You pair it with the Genie. You know, you run the Genie in to do 2 damage, and then you move the damage that's on the Genie over to something. So if you're playing against an opponent and they quest with their genie and you have a genie out, you could hit it, play Belle, move the damage over. I wouldn't say it's the correct position they do it in, but you can even do things like they quest with a Smee, run the genie in, take the Smee damage, then move the 3 damage over to something else, and you've got a 4 character 2/4 on board and a 4/4 quest for, like, you've got just a really established board and you've taken out 2 characters on their board. So that's just utterly amazing. She's really good. Elsa is, of course, everyone knows the powerhouse of Elsa. She's almost a card that I sometimes want to keep in the Mulligan, because if I don't see her, I can see sometimes how my games go down. Just being able to remove things. She's most likely not going to be banished herself because she has 5 health, and then that pairs well with the Belle because you can move the damage over, or you can use the Porps to heal her up. Just amazing card all around. Of course, I feel like I don't need to sell that card anymore. Anna is one that like I said, I tried. I think I managed to do her ability once, but she becomes this amazing threat. And what happens is you get to the 6 ink. So just the way that you're playing the Blurple is you just ramp on 2, then you play advantage with ink every turn. Genie on turn 3. You play a 5-drop on turn 4, and then sometimes you want to slam the Tamatoa down. If you haven't managed to get the Porp Schools into the discard, that means your 6-drop can't really be Tamatoa, so you might take a turn off to play Finders Keepers, or just do some more ramping, or slam some, a 4-drop and ramp or something like that. And that's all fine, but sometimes you just want to slam another big body on the board, and she is great for that. It also means that any Elsa you have just turns into this 5/5 rocket that deletes anything, and then you draw a card. So she's been really good. She survives Zeus. Like 3/6 as a stat line is very nice, giving support to things. Like sometimes as well, you don't even need to. You can have the Elsa on the board, but you don't need to give the support to Elsa. You can give it to like a Tipo and just run the Tipo in. So yeah, she seems pretty good. I don't know if I'd 4x her, but she's very much probably the flex spot still of the deck, but when she works, she's quite a powerhouse, so I quite like her. Tamatoa, he's happy as a clam. Just really the entire point of the deck is value. You're a value machine. Just draw cards and gain massive amounts of ink and then put things on the board. So yeah, very, very good. I feel like I don't need to explain that either. Pairs well with the Porpsicles. And also, again, it's just this other thing of like, so would they know with Blurple we're not going to cheat out a free dime, but it's a 4/5 that quests for 2 on board, and you've just got 2 Porpsicles back. Your opponent's going to have to do something about it. That might include fully board wiping or running some characters in. It's just, yeah, all around just really, really strong in the deck. And it justifies the Belle Porp more, because Belle Porp is great, but I think with Tamatoa together, those 3 just feels amazing. So that's really awesome. Hades, so the reason why I never really tried Blurple back in the day, when it was more looked at as a meme deck, was I didn't like the 8-cost Elsa. I thought she was kind of dumb. Kind of dumb. No, that's not really right. But I didn't think she was great because, you play her out and you freeze things, and I think sometimes people are like, oh, you get a B prep out of their hand. I'm like, yeah, but I lost my 8-cost 3-quester. And then sometimes you could freeze them for a turn, but it never felt correct to me. I never really liked it. But Hades just being deleting, and it's something that we played in Sapphire Steel for a while, so I kind of knew the turns and the correct times to use it. Just felt great. And keep them as 4x. Later on in the game, you might be a point where they've run out of cards and they're just trying to aggro to the win, and you're playing Hades. You give them the ink, you don't care about the ink, and then you're just questing for 2. And at that point, you might have Belle and a Genie on board, and you're questing for 6. If you've got an amazing curve of Genie, Belle, Tamatoa, Hades, and they all just quest for 2, you've got removal, you've got card draw, you've got presence on the board, you've got everything, and you just turn it all sideways and just win the game. So it's in a way, sometimes the deck can feel like an aggro ramp deck, which is nice. It's not an uncommon thing in card games for just ramp decks. They just ramp and slam down big bodies every turn. In Lorcana, I don't think we fully have that, because Ruby Sapphire Shark is more of, I'm ramping to do a thing. I'm ramping to Shark, which is the big drop, of course, but then it's like, I don't know, I want to do these things, which is play all my actions. And then the same with Ruby Sapphire items is like, I want to ramp, but then I want to play with items for a bit. Whereas Blurple feels like you ramp and you're just throwing like bombs every turn that you can, because you're just at a higher ink advantage. And that brings me on to the biggest bomb in the deck, which is Monstro, which after day 1 I wanted to cut, but on day 2 he stuck around and he's amazing. Sometimes you can lose games because they completely board wipe they completely board wipe, and then they'll use things like just double mana you or castle and library you. Monstro gives you, as long as you have cards in your hand, an almost infinite amount of times that you can restand him. You know, you can discard things like Porpsicles or T-Pose and Sails. Sometimes it can be a bit harder on choices on what to discard, but he readies himself up every time you discard a card. So I even had a game where someone tried to B prep and double mana me, and I knew I had a monster in hand. I'd been holding it for this moment, and then we managed to take it out. We took a massive amount of card loss, of course, but next time we play Finders Keepers, we're fine. And they've completely committed to this line of B prep, and you can't deal with 2 manas. So amazing. Of course, Steel Song wipes out the board. 8 health is insane. So sometimes as well, if I just didn't have a thing to put on the board to pressure them, I didn't want to let them have a turn off. I just put a Monstro down, just maybe hit one thing and restand it, and say like, hey, this is going to quest next turn, or Porpsicle heal it up as well. So just amazing card. I think as a 2x is fine. I think sometimes in the matchups where you need it, like I'm saying, anything that location spams you or Steel Song, if you draw them early, it feels rough. But yeah, just 2 is all right. For me, and it kind of felt like the right ratio, to be honest, because even still with the Monstro, you didn't always win those matchups where you used him. So yeah, just 2 is fine. I could maybe see 3. I don't know. 3 feels very overkill. I think I'd probably just take the bad games when I drew it early and accept that happens sometimes with the deck. But then the rest is just the draw mechanics, like Finders Keepers and Friends on the other side. Like just the deck, like I say, it just draws about 1,000,000 cards. So you can draw through discard. Like, it's mad how you can go into like the maybe not green still because these being the horizon, but green purple definitely. Like, you'll outdraw their discard and out resource them, and it's just mad like how that works. They have to be playing very hot and running and doing very well for it to work for them. Even into green still, like, as long as you manage games. I didn't think it's that bad into green still. Like, even as you manage your hand, like, don't let it get too big so they can be on the horizon you. And even when they do be on the horizon you, I had it at the event, they did it, and I drew into Porpsicle and 2 Finders Keepers. So just got tons of card draw again, and you out resource them eventually because you're just playing huge threats every turn, and you know they're establishing like Prince Johns and stuff like that you know eventually will just run out of their use and they'll have to turn them sideways. So I felt the green matchups were fine, and then like all the matchups, like the Ruby ones, like Ruby Amethyst, Ruby Sapphire, you could sort of play the resource game a lot better than them. You can play the removal game a lot better than them, but you forfeit a lot of that for resource. And then into aggro, it's fairly useless to do all that stuff, and you can just turn it into ink and use all your useful cards. But yeah, this is JDR's list, like sort of the Blurple guy. I just picked it up. I think what happened in the end as well, I don't know if I've already said in this video because it's been going a while because I've been talking about a new favorite pet deck. I think it ended up being the exact same list, or one of the lists he had on his dream board at one point. I don't think it's the exact one he has right now live, but this is what it looked like at one point. And yeah, like I say, 2-liner Blurples just feel very solid in the meta, very good. Your matchup spread's fine, and for 2 of the most consistent players out of the top 4 consistent players were Blurple players. That kind of proves to you that, you know, the deck might not always win the event, but you know, if you're aiming just to make top card, just do a consistent run, you know, it's very much there for you. Maybe you're bored of being high rolled or playing high roll decks and not hitting the high rolls, Blurple is the deck for you, I think. So I hope some of that rambling helped, and I'm welcoming Blue Steel family members that I'm going to be joining. Of course, still doing Amber Steel and Kiwi content as well. It's just I had a good weekend with Blurple.